You're listening to Errol Parker and Clancy Errol, editors of the Batuta Advocate, on Desert Rock FM. Well, here we are in the Koala Studios at Desert Rock FM, downtown Batuta. We've got a special guest today who's actually going to be doing a lot more kilometres around the country. He's made the big trip out to the Diamantina Shire, but this is just the beginning, I guess. James Reyne, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now,
nice to be here, all this way out here.
Yeah, you came out here while it's getting cool, actually.
Yeah, I noticed that as I was on the way.
Yeah, it's a very special time to be out here because we've just had a bunch of rain, and
you must be happy.
It's a region that's not really known for its rain, up here in the Simpson Desert. But most of the water now is making its way down to Lake Eyre, and Lake Eyre is coming back to life.
That's good.
So you'll have to pop down there after you're done up here.
Do a bit of fishing.
Yeah, well, the Lake Eyre Yacht Club is really seasonal.
Lake Eyre Yacht Club.
Very seasonal.
Very seasonal.
Yeah. Now, what's been happening, mate? You're about to go on tour.
Well, we're sort of on tour. We're always on tour somewhere, but we're about to... we've been doing regional stuff.
Yep.
Acoustic duo stuff, and that's got another 3 weeks. And then we've been doing some shows down in Melbourne with the band, and we're going to North Queensland with the band. We're doing the Enmore in Sydney on July the 12th with the band. We're just doing stuff all the time.
So you're about to hit the capitals, and I guess this could keep going. This is the Endless Summer Tour. That's
right. Well, we named it the Endless Summer Tour a while ago, and it's still going. But,
Is this named after the incredible surfing documentary?
Well, that was one of the things, because I think it started with that, because I always like to, when in doubt, go back to think Surf Cowboy and go back to things like those, those sort of pictures, the Endless Summer pictures, those posters, those old surfing posters, for me have always been a good, kind of place to, a good blueprint in terms of just sort of a look.
So I know that this is going to be an endless tour. I'm just kind of wondering if it's going to be endless, like in the Bob Dylan kind of way, where he's
never stop.
He's been on tour, hasn't he, since like 1988?
Yeah. No, I think we do have breaks.
Yeah.
We had 2 weeks like the other, a few weeks ago, but no, we essentially know what we're doing. I think most of August I'm going to do some recording in August, summer, September. But besides that, we pretty much know what we're doing until the end of 2020 rather, and we're talking about stuff we might do in 2021. So we know what we're doing at the end of next year.
That's some good job security you've got there, which is
as
rare,
much as you
I guess.
can in this sort of business, because you're the one punting it, and you just all you got to do is hope people turn up.
Now, this is one thing I've always wanted to ask you. As Queenslanders, we kind of associate the Australian beach surf culture with Queensland, and pretty much anywhere that they play rugby league is where you'd imagine there are surfers and
coast.
It's kind of it's eastern seaboard and fairly north. Probably Bega is the last beach that I would imagine people surf at.
Yeah,
but your whole kind of upbringing was surfing in the cold country.
Well, yeah, and I wasn't necessarily a surfer. I was in a band with some surfers, and they would do a lot of their surfing going north.
All right.
They would go north to do it, and you're right, but it starts probably Bega, Tathra, around there, which is very southern, right on the border of Victoria. But there is surf on the Mornington Peninsula where we live, where I still live. I mean, I've moved away, but I moved back. There is a surf culture down there, and there at the peninsula. So one side is Port Phillip Bay, which is flat, and then the other side is Western Port Bay, which has surf. It's fairly volatile, but it has surf. And then, of course, you've got the other, what they in Victoria they call the surf coast, because which is down Lorne, which is sort of west of Melbourne. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely surf down there.
So you did, growing up, you did have kind of the panel vans and the...
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Panel vans are considered, because I'm my age, back in the early 70s, panel vans weren't cool. Mm-hmm. Combis were sort of cool, or just a kind of, messed up car with a board in the back, a station wagon, but the panel vans weren't cool.
Well, it definitely struck a chord, resonated right around the country. But you're not actually one of Australia's greatest pub rock singers. You're also one of Nigeria's greatest, which is something we've kind of discovered in our... you and Hugo Weaving, there's a few others born in Nigeria and now high-profile Australians. What was the story there? Were you an army brat?
It's kind of, yeah. So what happened, and I think Hugo's background is similar in the sense that we had... our father was in the Royal Marines, a British man, And he didn't want to be a career soldier. He was a captain. He was ADC to certain governors and things like that. So he didn't want to be a career soldier. So he left the service, got a job with BP. I don't know specifically Hugo's background, but he got a job with BP. Was posted to the colonial outpost of Nigeria where they had oil settlements. And his job was to go out and check on the oil settlements. And so we were stationed there. My parents were stationed in Lagos. Right. Lagos and a suburb of Lagos called Jos. So they were moved around a bit. And both my brother and I were born there because they were there.
So you were kind of in the first wave of African gangs to arrive in Victoria, I guess.
Correct. We were.
In the 60s?
Very early 60s. We established that movement.
Yeah.
Call it that.
Wasn't very much an election issue back then, but it definitely is nowadays. But, you're living proof that all these kids need is a guitar and a bit of support from their surrounding community. And,
correct. And it could be. Well, the interesting thing is it was almost in reverse our situation because our father, who was extremely British, went out to Australia in the early 60s because he had to get out of Nigeria because of the Biafran Revolution, etc., etc. Arrived in Australia in the very early 60s, a very British man. In Australia in the early 60s, which was white Australia. So it was extreme. It was this little colonial outpost in this place called Mount Eliza that had a couple of dirt roads. And he railed against what Australia was then. So we had two different vocabularies. We had a vocabulary for home and a vocabulary for school.
And that was more British at home, or that was...
Very British at home. So at home it was lavatory.
Yep. Lavatory.
But when we were kids, we came with this. We had plums in our mouths, apparently. Yep. So it was lavatory at school and toilet at lavatory at home, toilet at school, and had to call it the sitting room at home. There's a lounge, and that was a couch in school and sofa at home, and cordial at school and squash at home. So there's a lot of that.
Very, very English. But would that, being born in Nigeria at that time, if you would ever run for politics, you'd have to go through your citizenship and all that kind of stuff. Would that have been technically British, similar to British India?
Correct. I'm a British citizen. Yeah. I have a British passport with it. If I put citizenship on a thing, I put UK.
Yeah. Right.
Even though I've been here since I was 4.
Oh, well, if you ever choose to run to Parliament, you'll have to tear that up.
That's true. I got to reapply, don't I?
Yeah.
I got to go through the ceremony.
But
can I be Prime Minister if I'm not? No, I'm joking.
That's job security, though. If you can get in the Senate, that's 6 years. You can
and retire and be on a nice little package.
That's the endless summer.
That's very true.
Now, a word that everyone associates with Australian crawl and James Reyne, as I said before, is pub rock. I'm not sure if that was the word that was getting around while you guys were doing it.
Yeah, well, it wasn't.
It wasn't.
No. It's been coined since then.
Yeah. Since. Okay. And how did that all come together, and how has this since been documented in that way? It wasn't as insular as everyone makes it out to be?
The term pub rock? Or
just the scene?
The scene? No, it wasn't at all. It was a big scene. There were a lot of bands going around, and there were a lot of pubs. There were a lot of places to play. In New South Wales was the RSLs, but there were a lot of pubs in New South Wales as well. But there was a huge circuit right around the country. Mm-hmm. And there were many, many bands going around working 6 days a week, 6 nights a week for most of the year, and it supported it. And a lot of these bands are pulling big, big crowds, a couple of thousand people a night. And you would run up and down the coast, all around the coast and into the regional areas and be pulling these crowds. So it was a very supportive. I think radio is really supportive of it. So it wasn't as insular as I think it sounds now, yeah.
And it wasn't just Victoria, Adelaide, which is how it's often presented as well.
No.
It was...
Oh, no, Sydney was huge.
Yeah.
A lot of great bands. Queensland was huge. The thing with Queensland, and the one thing you did notice then was you crossed over the border into Queensland and you did almost sense a change. It was the years of Joe Bjelke-Petersen and that sort of world.
The corrugated iron curtain.
Correct. Yeah. And it was. And you really would sense it when you got over there. There was quite a difference. You were almost pulled up over the border and the car was searched almost. It was almost like that,
Yeah, no, it was an interesting time for everyone. And, of course, the scene in Brisbane kind of spawned out of that. There was a bit more of a punk kind of sound.
Yeah.
You kind of have to roll the dice at getting bashed and locked up each time you played a gig, which was probably a bit more anarchist kind of attitude getting around there.
But at least now, they've come round to the fact that was quite a good time for music in Queensland.
Oh, yeah.
And they've named a bridge after the go-betweens, I guess.
That's right.
That's
And, back then, if you'd suggested that, you probably would have got thrown in jail.
You would have had a wiretap put on you.
But the interesting thing was there really was this other this subculture there, because the university there spawned a lot of stuff. So the university in Brisbane, you could see there was a great scene around that. And around the streets of Brisbane in this hot place, a lot of people just dressed all in black in the middle of summer.
Tropical goths. And it was a definite, conscious effort to kind of fight against the prevailing kind of political thing. Well, yeah, the 4ZZZ's still around, the radio station up there, the community station that played a lot of that music and has remained quite what's the word? Anarchist. Quite anarchist. Yes, it's remained quite anarchist. It's still got that. Whereas the community stations around the country are a bit more like Triple J. Whereas they're still kind of got their communist posters up on the wall.
Yeah, they do,
and the likes up there. Now, tell us a little bit. You obviously were, as you said, there was a lot of work. There was a lot of gigs. This was in the music industry. They call it BP and AP, which is before pokies and after pokies.
Yep.
The concept of having a live music gig at an RSL might shock a lot of people, particularly in New South Wales now, and even in Queensland. But that was what they were doing. They were getting the kids into the RSL and they were packing it out.
Yep.
When did you notice that kind of start changing?
I think when it happened in Melbourne, because Melbourne didn't have the kind of legislation where you could have pokies. It was always there in New South Wales, a little less so in Queensland. Mm-hmm. I guess the rugby states, they seem to have it. And the thing you would notice, I think, from memory is the RSLs, they obviously had a lot of money because the places were huge. The facilities were always much better than a lot of the pubs. A lot of the pubs, they didn't care. They put a band in there. We've got a room at the back. It'll hold 1,500 people. We've got that sort of toilet. We can make a dressing room, kind of. At least they got a toilet, But I think when pokies come, I don't know what year it was that the legislation changed where they had pokies in Melbourne and Adelaide and places that weren't the sort of AFL states. The venues dropped off because they didn't need bands to pull people in there. They could put, it's cheaper to put a whole lot of pokies in there, and the people are going to come in and you're going to make a lot of money from them. But you're right, there definitely was a BP and an AP.
Can you tell us a little bit about your time in Australian Crawl? When you guys kind of put together Boys Light Up, did you ever imagine that would become like a bong smoker's anthem?
The song or the album? The song, no, because it's not about that. The song is not about smoking dope, and it got tagged with that, and it got banned, which you always wanted.
Yeah.
If you got banned, going, we got banned, cool.
Yeah.
Because I think people thought it was about smoking dope, and it wasn't at all.
Yeah. I guess the surfing thing kind of worked hand in hand with that particular
Yeah,
thing.
I think, but people sort of are related to that and associated with it. And we weren't going to complain and say, it's not about that,
No, a lot of musicians don't like telling what was going on when they wrote a song. But what was that song about? We kind of feel like it might have been about sex workers and...
No, it's about a blowjob.
Okay.
It's a song about a blowjob, or they used to call them head jobs in Australia.
Yeah.
Can I say that?
Gobbies.
No.
Yeah. It's all right. We are...
And we name it as a Hummer. It mentions Hummer in there, and it's about... And one of my I have to say this, one of my greatest thrills was there was a time quite a few years ago when John Howard was Prime Minister, and Pat Cash, who I knew a bit because Pat used to come to gigs, and Pat plays guitar and likes to get up with bands and play, and we knew Pat a bit, and so Pat, it's got to know him a bit, and we got inducted into the Tennis Hall of Fame, or maybe the Melbourne Tennis Centre Hall of Fame. Anyway, he wanted to, and they do this little ceremony on the centre court at the Melbourne Tennis Centre, and he wanted to have me to go along and play Boys Light Up. And John Howard, because he was Prime Minister, he wanted to give that impression he was a sporting guy and he supported a lot of sport. Good on him. He was there. And to have him sitting there with whoever his mind is, but he figured someone's gone, just sing Boys Light Up, make it look good. And John Howard mouthed, Boys Light Up. So the Prime Minister of Australia singing a song about a blowjob. I think, without realising, I thought it was lovely.
And based like a song about some kids down in regional kind
of... probably smoking too many cigarettes.
Yeah. Oh no, it's an interesting ballad. But it's still very much like each generation of 16-year-old kids underneath, grandma's house ripping billies. It continues to exist in that world. They discover it and they play it. So,
well, I hope so. Yeah. Let's hope so for many generations to come.
You've indirectly found a never-ending subculture there.
That's right.
Now, tell us a little bit about Victoria and that kind of. You're still down there on the peninsula.
Yep.
Which is an interesting part because not many cities have that. It's now turned into a bit of a weekender kind of area.
Yeah.
What was it
definitely.
like as a kid?
Well, it was kind of a place you went. I mean, all my surf friends used to go down there, go surfing. It was kind of, because I grew up there, I could never see it objectively. I thought it was just kind of, most of it was full of a lot of funny little sort of holiday houses, like little weatherboard places that were just cheap places. A lot of people that lived in Melbourne, if they could afford it, would have a cheap holiday house down there because it was cheap. You know, the land was cheap, and no one really thought of it. Was not well before the days of if you've got a house with a sea view, that was a huge thing. No one really thought of that. So I know it was the place I grew up. It was a lot of bush. I don't think you think about it as there are a lot of orchards. There were no wineries. Now there's full of wineries, but there are a lot of orchards. I mean, we used to get summer jobs picking fruit down the orchards. But it was a beautiful land. It was a beautiful kind of environment, but you never really looked at it like that. It was just a place of these funny little holiday houses, and you get summer jobs picking fruit, and that was pretty much it. I do remember when we first started, the first bands we had, you could get they'd have little community halls. So there's dotted around the peninsula, these community halls. So you could rent them really cheaply, and you could run your own little gigs, and you could just put it like you're having a party, just put out flyers and have the band play and charge $2 at the door or whatever we charged. So I remember that was quite a good part of it. But you never really thought about it as being anything special. And now it's through the roof.
Yeah, there was a lot of kind of just see Range Rovers, AFL players. That's the kind of vibe down there.
Yeah, we always laugh. Summer started when you start to see the clean Range Rovers.
Yeah, right.
Because all our cars are just covered in dust.
Yeah. And then they go back home before they get dusty.
Well, speaking of very clean cars, very nice, expensive cars, unpublished critics.
Yeah,
those boys from Guns N' Roses.
Yeah,
right.
What do you reckon?
Well,
this is a conspiracy that a lot of us like to engage in, particularly around the early days of smoking dope. You kind of say, "Hey, listen to this. No, listen to this."
I've had a good listen to both. I mean, there's something there.
Yeah, a friend of mine who's much younger than me, funnily enough, I don't know if he was stoned, but he did do a what do you call a comparison. He mixed this thing together, and when I heard it like that, I thought, "Crikey, that's so close."
Yeah.
And I was never aware of it until a couple of people started pointing it out to me, and more people were pointing it out to me. It's, look, I don't know. And people reminding me that it was very possible they could have heard the song because in their early interviews they'd say they were big fans of Rose Tattoo and probably obviously AC/DC and an Australian band. So it's not unusual that they might have heard of another Australian band called Australian Crawl and heard that song. I don't know. The chords are exactly the same, but there are plenty of songs with exactly the same chords. The melody, it gets close. It gets close there.
Yeah.
But after much pushing by other people, I have invested, especially as an American friend of mine, who's, I won't mention him, but he was a singer in a fairly well-known kind of band from Seattle, early 90s, and he now lives in LA. He sings like a rock singer though.
Okay, right. So
band called Candlebox. Anyway,
we're doing our best Pearl Jam.
That's right, Eddie. But he's, but I've had a couple of, I had a lawyer look at it, and there's the statute of limitations. And apparently, if they repackage, or there's some law, if they repackage the record that has that on, or a greatest hits or something, then it's considered a new record. Okay. You can kind of try it. Yeah. But they've got a lot of money. They're represented by Warner Brothers. I've got the same. See, here's my beef: is that we have the same publishing company. Yeah. Warner Chappell, and I think if Warner Chappell, got off their asses and did something, I have a beef with them about something else anyway. Yeah. But so I don't mind, and I hope they hear this and get back to me because they won't get back to me otherwise. Yeah. But if the publishing company were doing their job, they would be sorting it out one way or the other, and they're not. But that's the way of many publishing companies, banks and filing cabinets.
You hear the yarns, and as we said, like your music kind of is discovered by new generations each year, and that yarn gets trotted out as well. And with that comes the whole, when Barnsey and all these guys and the pub rock scene was blowing up, everyone likes to say that there were people from America flying over in the pubs watching this stuff.
Yeah, because there's that yarn where there's Bruce Springsteen. He wrote Born in the USA, and he was like, yeah, I heard this song called K-Sun. And it really inspired me.
He said that?
Well, that's the yarn.
Wow.
These are the yarns, yeah.
And then in the song he's like, I had a brother at K-Sun.
Yeah. And they're exact same model, I guess.
There's another conspiracy.
You create a song critical of the government and it ends up becoming like a Australiana anthem or an Americana anthem.
Yeah.
The exact same thing, in that concept. But is there much merit to those kind of rumours that there were the Americans had heard about this thing you guys were doing down in Australia?
Look, I don't know. You hear these things. It's possible. I know for a fact that the guitar. Look, one of the things that I think is true, and they admit to this because it's not really ripping anybody off, but the guitar sound that essentially, if you trace it back, and I know for a fact that Lobby Lloyd invented, which was basically to cut through all these pubs in Australia, and then I think Angus Young modified it and took it on, quite as he should. And so that guitar sound, I know now that there was, well, I don't know now, but there was a period in LA studios where they worked out a combination of like Marshall this and a Marshall something else through a Boogie something else amp, and you would get that sound. And so some other modification equipment piece of thing, you would get that sound. So they purposely went out to get that Australian kind of AC/DC, Lobby Lloyd, Thorpe and the Aztecs kind of sound that was invented here just to cut through. You'd got this sweaty beer barn full of, vaguely violent, pissed people wanting to kill.
Sounds glorious, actually. Yeah. Now,
Angus and Malcolm Young too. They had a bit of a head start because they're older brothers in the Easy Beats.
That's right.
Yeah.
So George and the Easy Beats. And, that's just, and they invented that stuff. Because I remember seeing AC/DC when I was 16. I remember seeing down at a place near where I live called Sorrento. There's a place down there called Tomcats. It used to open only in summer. I remember seeing there with like 50, I'm sure everyone my age has got these stories, but with like 50 other people. And they were doing exactly what they do now. It's the same kind of, it's not a formula, but the same kind of approach. And they were brilliant. But it's just that thing that grew up, whether it's an Adelaide thing, because all those kind of 10-pound poms came out of Adelaide and went there, and it's a working class thing, and these bored kids and these creative bored kids got together, and they creative talented kids and invented this sound.
Yeah. Well, now in Adelaide, it's the home of Aussie hip hop. So all the grandkids or the kids of the 10-pound poms are now
emulating American hip hop.
Emulate American hip hop. Yeah.
Have you heard any of that stuff? Like, are you into Aussie hip hop?
Well, there's one I've been asked. I was asked for one of these things you do to put together 10 Australian. I won't do it. It's one of the interviews. I'm going to be nice, but my daughter. I mean, I've heard "Swear Jar" by Illy. I quite like, and there's other things that she plays because the guys she knows because they're 19, 20 and they play all this sort of stuff. Am I a fan? Well, some of it. Yeah. Some of it's like everything. Some of it I think is, that sounds pretty good. And then there's a lot of it's just rubbish. But that's like any kind of music,
Yeah. And now the vowels, what vowels would you sing in?
Okay, so in terms of hip hop, because I have a theory about that too, because I once did a kind of rappy sort of thing over on a song on an album I made in 1999 called Designed for Living. This song called, and I was with my friend Brett Kingman, who was helping me, and he'd listened to quite a bit of rap at that stage because they call it rap then. And we figured the Australian accent's a pretty good accent to rap in. And if you're going to do it, the approach to take it when you're recording is pretend you're yelling at the kids. And that's the kind of approach. And it kind of works. Those broad vowels seem, depending on the words you're saying, but seem to kind of work. I know it sounds weird.
And it does sound foreign, but then again, it's just like any other kind of scene. You can't say that any genre is not derivative of something that's happened in the States or England either.
Of course, yeah. And there's always the top 10, the 10% of people that invented this stuff and are genuinely talented at it, and then there's always the 90% of the pretenders, the followers.
And it was also weird how Adelaide was the home of it, and they've got that really weird accent. Oh, yeah. That really round.
I know. That's Adelaide.
And they rap.
That's it. We've been trying to epitomise it.
They rap about things like...
What to say?
And then they rap about things like... trampolines, sausage rolls.
France and chants.
Yeah.
We've moved on from Guns N' Roses, but one thing you can take solace in when you compare the two is that your song had a substantial less amount of pedophilic content in it. So Unpublished Critics is the winner at the end there.
As opposed to Sweet Child O' Mine.
Yeah.
Look at those lyrics closely. It's kind of spooky.
That's another thing of, the things that you could sing about, in days gone by, and people wouldn't bat an eyelid, and now...
Yeah, I know, like, there's people like Errol Flynn. He'd have a lifespan in Hollywood now that you could measure in...
That's right.
In microseconds.
That's right. He would.
Yeah. Well, it's good. Time to change, a bit more accountability. Now, tell us what is happening on the road nowadays you see. Like, does it feel like it used to feel? You still stumble across people that you think, oh, they're doing something interesting, or you like what's happening there, and you kind of all work together that way? Or is it more just a one-man show, I guess, nowadays, and you kind of...
Well, I think you work in your own. Is what you mean? Like you work within. Yeah, you kind of run your own race.
Yeah, you've got a small circle now.
Well, of people that I work with.
Yeah.
Well, I have the band, my band. We've all worked together for a long time, and when we're playing, I'm just a singer in this great band. I'm lucky enough to play with the guys I play with. They're great musicians. It's a killer band, and we play all the songs you would expect us to play, that would you expect to come out of my mouth, the crawl stuff, solo stuff, all those things. And it's just a great band. You carve your own little niche and you get on with what you feel you should be doing within the confines of the Australian music. And people got the music business, music industry, I don't know what it is, but the music world.
The world, yeah.
The music world. And it's a little marketplace, and it's all about the price of fish in the marketplace, really. So you just try and weave your way through, navigate your way through the sort of vicissitudes of that kind of thing. I don't pay a lot of attention to what, say, my peers are doing. I mean, you obviously hear about things that are happening, but I don't. I always had the theory too, you start looking sideways, you're in trouble, you're trying to keep up.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, when we were younger, of course, and I've always made this joke, and I'm still a bit like that, and I have friends who are in other bands, and you can be very friendly with someone, they can be a friend of yours from another band, but you always, quietly are going, I think a new record, I hope that fails.
Yeah. That's just natural, right?
So I guess that now's been, like, that's kind of what the crux of all these TV shows like The Voice and, Idol
Everyone's
and stuff.
So friendly.
Everyone now is, having to judge themselves off another person, like these things are a competition.
That's right. Exactly.
And there's only one winner.
That's right. There's only one winner. And you're sure it's not a competition in a way in terms of how we were and still are, but it is a bit of a competition. You want to do better than anybody else, obviously, Not that that's why you do it, but you kind of go, really? They do that? Damn.
Yeah.
And it really annoys me.
So we're not going to see you on The Voice as a judge?
Unless they ask me to be a judge, not a coach. A judge. Then you can sit there and judge, and I'd last about the first lunchtime, I reckon. What are you thinking?
Yeah.
But yeah, it shouldn't be. It's not a horse race.
Yeah.
The ironic thing about that is that it's a competition, and yet everybody's so bloody nice to each other. Oh yeah, I love him. He's a lovely guy, and I wish him well. And really,
so,
you should be wishing they don't do it.
Standing on that head like a stepping stone.
Correct. Yeah. And deep inside, they are.
And social media has given artists a lot more of a platform to talk shit about each other as well. Yeah. We've seen, drunken slips on a comment section, or just accusations against, that sounds a lot like us, or that kind of, you took that idea from us and that kind of stuff, which is good to see. There's still a bit of it out there, but probably a little antisocial on social media channels to be putting that out to the world.
Yeah, doing a social media channels. Find a cleverer way of doing it, a more creative way.
Do it in the pub after the gig,
or just be better yourself.
Yeah. Now, do you have the song? Do you have that song? We interviewed Paul Kelly, and he's got a couple songs like this where there's just that one song where doesn't matter where you're playing, there will be a punter that comes up and asks for that song, even if it's not part of the set that night.
Yeah.
And
I got a couple of them,
Yeah. What do you reckon is the most...
I get surprised sometimes with some of the choices, but it's either Boys Light Up or Reckless or Errol.
Yep.
Heard that one a few times.
And sometimes you do the thing, you walk on stage and they go, Boys Light Up!
Yeah.
It'll happen.
Yeah.
And one night, a few years ago, and I thought, just to play with the sort of theatre of it, I won't do it. I won't do Boys Light Up. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't do it, and we finished, and I got bailed up in the car park. These 5 guys, pissed obviously, and they were they were genuinely furious.
Yeah, yeah.
They were furious, and they were going to beat me up.
Yeah.
They were really, really angry. And fortunately, I was with Brett, my friend who plays guitar in the band. His sister there, Tracy, was there, and she took him on, you know.
She had the de-escalation skills?
Yeah, she talked him down.
Yeah, yeah.
She had a real go at him.
Yeah.
And they didn't know what to do, you know, and she pushed one of them really hard and sort of freaked him out. And that sort of straightened him up a bit.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't always end up that well. There's one example of Daryl Braithwaite, and obviously he's been plagued by the horses every spring carnival.
Well, that's my joke with him, but go on.
he before he became like the guest appearance, it was just a song people played at the pub. And one night he was booked, and this is a yarn. I had a mate that was there at the Stock Exchange in Brisbane, and they'd kind of marketed it as Daryl Braithwaite's coming to sing the horses. So they all came back after from Eagle Farm, and they were all blind in the suits, Tarot Cash Army kind of vibe, and they were all there. And he did the same thing, and he just played all his sherbet stuff, and wasn't going to play the horses just out of principle before he embraced this kind of narrative.
Yeah.
And then
it's like Daryl will give you $40,000 to sing it at the AFL Grand Final.
Yeah, he's sold. He's since embraced it, but then out of principle, he wasn't going to do it. It was a pub gig, and they were like, horses. He goes, no, last song was How's That? They finished and they were packing up, and a guy walked up and said, Daryl, play the horses or I'll fucking kill you.
Right, yeah.
And then all right, one more song.
Yeah. And it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me.
That is, you're dealing with fandom.
And just quickly on that song, because I know Daryl, I've been mates with him for a long time, and we always have fun with that, the whole idea of that song. Yeah. And it's not even, and I always make the joke about, on Melbourne Cup Day, he gets 83 gigs. Yeah. He must make a fortune on that day. The song's not even really about horses. Yeah. It's got nothing to do with horses, really. But, And
do you find that do you recognise fans now from towns? Like, do you know them, or you can actually identify the archetype?
There's a certain archetype I can identify. There's a core.
The punters and the dribblers. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a core that, and I love them. I love the ones that come, they're the ones you love. Mm-hmm. The ones that pay their money to come, you got to love them. Mm-hmm. And sure, if they have their idiosyncrasies, well, that's what it is. Mm-hmm. It is interesting. It's got much better, but the one thing in Australia, harking back to the Australian sound and whether Americans came out here and the pub rock scene and that sort of unique institution that was the Australian pubs, still exists a bit, but nothing like it used to. And it was you'd get through it, and when you're young, you're bulletproof and you take them on, and you got the microphone, so you feel you've got the power. But there is still a bit this weird sort of undercurrent of violence that's always there, especially if you include alcohol. Yeah. But there really is this,
Yeah, they can't.
It's really odd, and I guess the social media thing has allowed everybody to have,
a lot more access.
That's right. And I always figure the people that have opinions, every single person that seems to have an opinion on social media is the sort of person that doesn't deserve an opinion and probably hasn't got the brains to have a proper opinion. And they're the ones putting opinions on. Yeah. And the people that probably have thought something through, have done some research or read a book, God forbid, and have the right, therefore possibly a right to maybe a vaguely informed opinion. The ones that aren't going to go, I'm not putting my opinions on this stupid social media. What's the point?
Be picked apart by guys with Holden Commodores as their profile picture, and just to get abused by the punters. No, you're right. It's there's a channel for academic opinions, and it's usually the places that people aren't reading. It's
that's right,
in books and lectures.
Yeah, or just not putting it out there on that medium.
Yeah. Well, like there's been heaps of people who have been running for office in this election. They've been unstuck by social media.
That's right.
I know. It's like from all these things that they've posted years ago.
That's right.
It's come back to haunt. It's probably one of the worst inventions that man's ever made.
Yeah, in terms of your CV, definitely. We've spoken to a lot of sports stars who said, thank Christ that wasn't around when we, former players. And I'm sure musicians are the same. We're seeing it in the politicians, but there is now a digital footprint that you have to consider, and that would be something young musicians are now considering.
That's right. Yeah. And you think, and who knows, it may go through the roof, and in 20 years or 30 years or whatever, you're still sitting down, people interviewing you going, you remember back 30 years ago you said this?
Yeah, yeah.
And now you're all grown up and you realise the error of your ways.
Yeah. Or you streaked, there's a video of it. Yeah. Now, you've done a few different sounds. You did a James Blundell, speaking of, rogue political candidates, James Blundell, former Katter MP candidate. That was, what was that? Was that 1992?
Yep.
How did you like doing the country thing?
Okay, so I've always been a big fan of what they now call probably Americana, kind of more folky country. When I was a kid at school, we'd have a record club. I used to take Townes Van Zandt records to school.
Yeah. So outlaw kind of.
And Jerry Jeff Walker, but it wasn't called that. It was just some music. My friends and I, we used to listen to that sort of stuff and be weird. And now, of course, everyone, it's name-checked Townes Van Zandt. They name-check him all the people like that.
Yeah.
So I've always liked that kind of stuff. I loved Creedence, which is close to that kind of country music, as I say, what would now be called, Jason Isbell, I'm a huge fan of his now. I mean, he's a great craftsman. And that's the sort of stuff I've always liked. Wordsmith. But country, I mean, a lot of people would think of, I'm not a huge fan of it, but I like that sort of music. And that just that with James Blundell came about because the record company at the time knew I liked it, and it was their idea. So I wanted to do maybe a Dingo song and do it with James. And they chose James because I think he was the most profile guy then.
Yeah.
He was always on the midday show.
Yeah.
So I think all the women loved James because he's a good-looking guy, and
he had the right.
He had his hair, all his hair. And then I can say that because I don't mind, but but yeah, it was But James was funny on that when we did that and it worked. I didn't think it'd do anything, and it went to number one. And then we did a short tour, and it was on that tour that he was being approached by I guess it was called the Country Party then.
Yeah, right.
So nearly every gig we did, there'd be somebody backstage kind of chatting to him about that.
Oh, that's worse than an A&R, isn't it? That's worse than someone trying to poach you to sign you.
But I think he considered it for a little while.
Yeah. Oh, no, he made a run with Katter.
I did do a run with Katter. I'd heard that he'd been approached by them. I didn't know. Yeah. And look, he still lives out in Stanthorpe on the farm. He's got a farm, and he was a jackaroo,
Yeah.
Stanthorpe. Johnny Cash played in Stanthorpe.
Did he?
Have you heard that yarn?
Yeah, it's the coldest place in Queensland too, Stanthorpe.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's
Australia's Griffith.
Yeah, it's the.
Oh, is it? In that way. Okay.
It's
really?
Yeah, they got a lot of wine.
It's the only place in Queensland where it snows occasionally.
Wow.
But
there you go.
Johnny Cash came out here to do a gig for the nurses as a fundraiser.
Yeah.
And then now got the Cash Festival, like the Elvis Parks Festival. But it's an interesting story. No one knew he was here. They'd promised the town he was coming, and it was almost like it was the greatest stitch up.
Wow.
Until he was there. Like, this is when he was full blown.
Yeah.
Big collar, hair.
Yeah.
June Carter kind of.
Wow.
Yeah. No. It's there's a few different festivals. When are we going to get the Australian Crawl Festival, and where's that going to be?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you should say that because someone did mention to me it wasn't Australian Crawl. They were going to do the Petty Fest or Pettywood they do in America. The Tom Petty, all these bands play. There was some probably our agent or something put his idea. We're going to do one of James one, but that I don't know if that'll ever happen. But there won't an Australian Crawl Fest. No, there won't be one.
No, because
rainy conditions.
Because I've heard that part of the reason why you'll never see the boys from Powderfinger up on stage again is because they own half a Splendor. So
right. Well, there you go.
So they aren't ever going to be like, all right, boys, the ATO has been in touch. I think we should do one more time around the country.
No, we did that. The last tour we did in Australian Crawl was pretty much for that reason. We pay our debts and then get out.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of bands that could do it, but obviously people go their different ways. Silverchair could do it, but I don't
So you're talking about like a tour where you do...
Oh, I was actually talking about down in Mornington Peninsula, you just do a festival for your music, but obviously that couldn't come from you. That'd have to come from the punters.
Yes, you can't. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, you can't say, "Please come along and celebrate me."
Dresses me.
Yes, that's right. Could you please? That's right.
Yeah. No, Silverchair could do another tour. I reckon they could do an ATO tour, but I think
probably not at the moment.
Well, Daniel's not in that world, is he? He's certainly not.
I think he's not in our world at the moment. Right. He's just hanging around.
Yeah.
Is he?
The rest of the boys are back in Newcastle. Yeah. But you are on tour.
Yep.
And you've got May... okay.
Just passed.
You just done June 1st at Palms at Crown.
July 6th.
We're
doing that all year.
Yeah. July 6th. These are the immediate ones. July 6th at Palms at Crown with Taxi Ride. Yes.
Yep. Creeping up slowly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And then the big one, 12th of July, middle of winter, Boom Crash Opera at the Enmore, one of the country's last great Art Deco theatres.
Yeah.
That's right. It's a beautiful theatre. We play there many times. It's a beautiful place.
Limp Bizkit broke the floors at the Enmore.
Did they on the stage?
They told the crowd to jump, and they all fell through the floorboards.
And then you're going back to back, Jesus Christ, just like the old days. So that's
we're going the Star. Gold
Boom
Coast.
Crash Opera again.
Ooh.
Boom Crash.
At the Star, and then a spot where Clancy and I did our show.
Yeah.
In Adelaide.
The Gov.
The Gov.
At the
Your
Gov.
show. What's your show this?
We did a national tour last year
Yeah.
on stage show talking about
Yeah.
Batuta.
Oh, great.
The Gov was a great venue. They got a great green room there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That little place outside the stage.
Yeah. Because we were mostly doing like theatres, and then that was the first pub gig we got to do. We really liked the Gov. So shout out to the Gov. We were on the same night as Block Party. So, Adelaide's not big enough for two shows.
No, it's always
And they were just across
the road.
Yeah,
The entertainment centre.
Yeah,
In fact, Mark played there when Springsteen was across the road too.
Oh, that's a big one too.
So, it's not as many people here tonight. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think we were originally supposed to be at the entertainment spot across the road, and our agent was like, "Oh, this is up to 3,000." I was like, "Fucking hell!"
Yeah. Adelaide is Batuta's closest capital city, but I don't know if they're
if there's going to be 3,000 people in there to go and watch a road show spectacular about a podcast.
Yeah.
It was a bit ambitious that show, but
we went to the Gov. And then you're on...
Sorry, so do you do the pod like this?
Kind of. It was a bit of history of us and the newspaper and, our various sort of run-ins with people, people like Richard Branson, the Prime Minister, and Pantsman Joyce. Yeah. There's lots of people.
Yeah.
The Gov, yeah.
The Gov, August 3 and September 7 at Palms at Crown.
Yep. That's just the first Saturday of every month we're at the Palms at Crown.
Okay.
For the rest of the year.
So basically, it's an endless type of summer, but
that's kind of why we
obviously
because we're there for the whole year.
In Victoria, they have to have a winter,
and it's and they've started,
and the poor bastards in Perth, they miss out again.
Yeah, on winter.
Well, we can't see any gigs in Perth. Here
and on us.
Yeah.
No, we're going to. We're doing the acoustic duo show on sometime in somewhere.
Regal Theatre, 21st of September.
Regal Theatre, that's it.
In Perth. So it's good. He's not too big for his boots. He's not Kendrick Lamar. He's not going to bypass Perth. We went out to Perth too. We gave him a sympathy visit. But,
where'd you play in Perth?
The Astor.
Oh, the Astor's great.
Yeah.
That's a great theatre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's got a nice band room underneath.
It's very it does. Yeah.
It's very low roof.
Yeah, very low roof.
Yeah, very good acoustics in that place,
Right.
We made the terrific decision to go down the street and get a Brazilian barbecue before we went on stage.
What is that?
Yeah.
It's just endless meat.
Endless meat.
Churrascaria.
Yeah.
And it was in summer in Perth. It was like 41 degrees outside, and I was like, "This is what we need just before we go on." Is about a kilo of meat. And I was like, "Hello, everyone. How's it all going?"
That was the first show where I had a nap in the green room before we went on. So, well, you're an experienced man. You'd be familiar with the naps in the green room. But yeah,
no. I'd certainly know not to eat too much meat before you go on.
Yeah. Well,
I'll leave it 3 hours.
It was our
beforehand.
first tour. So I guess
when you're on stage talking, drinking beer as well, we found was problematic.
No, because you burp.
Yeah.
That was it.
Burping's a bad one.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for joining us today, James.
No, thank you for having me. Lovely. Great.
We might
Brilliant.
put the word out to get a crawl festival or a crawl fest.
A crawl fest.
Crawl fest or rainy conditions was the other idea I pitched.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's good. I like that.
Because we know you got the punters. You're on the road for the endless summer. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Lovely.
Thanks.